It took one step, leaped across the creek, which was probably 10 or 12 foot wide, landed on the other side on top of the game trail, walked straight down the game trail. I'm overlooking that spot, and it stops and looks right at me, and I'm looking at it thinking, what is this thing? I'm Darrell Denton. I'm from Ridgetop, Tennessee. Grew up in Tennessee, lived there all my life. Pretty much got into this type thing due to the fact of my first encounter in November the 6th of '92 when I was deer hunting on my grandfather's farm deep in the woods and had an encounter that pretty much changed my life forever, and I've pretty much been going on since then to different things. That encounter I don't scare too easy. That encounter pretty much terrified me, and I didn't go in the woods for nearly 7 years. And I was fishing on the Cumberland River of Tennessee in February of '99, and something kept taking my styrofoam minnow buckets, and this went on for 2 weeks in a row. I would go back on the weekend, and somebody would take it. I couldn't rebait my hook, and when I came up to put my fish on the line, and I pretty much found out that the third week when I went back, I tied a string to the handle of my minnow bucket. And when I came up after I'd put a fish on my stringer, it was stretched over into some kudzu, a bunch of real thick brush through a game trail. And that was when I seen my second creature, which I call the forest people. I think they're different. I think there's a lot of different type of those creatures, and there are people I'm 100% in belief of. I think they're a human hybrid. These were very friendly. They became my very close friends. They were non-aggressive, and I became very close to them for nearly 5 years. I was in there every day or every other day, except for the few times that I was gone for a week or longer on vacation with my family or something. And they became very close to me, and I learned a lot from them. I learned to trust them. They learned to trust me, and it was just a great outcome how it turned out. I really, really miss them today. I wish I could see them again. My first encounter was November 6th of '92. Me and 3 of my buddies that I grew up and played ball with for years, that we would go to my grandfather's farm opening week of black powder season, which we call muzzleloader in Tennessee, and it opens up on Monday and goes through the following Sunday. We would go to my granddad. My granddad had a large farm in Cannon County, Tennessee, which is about 96 miles from Nashville. Very, very rural. I mean, I'm talking about rural. Dirt roads, gravel roads. My grandfather never had a car. He had a mule and two mules and a wagon he went to town in, and he lived the old way. But he had a beautiful farm, and we would pull my camper up there, park it next to the barn for a week, and a buddy of mine, a couple of my other buddies that went with me, Jason and Cody, would pull their truck with all our ATVs, and we all had ATVs to go out on, and we all had stands built in the woods. We had probably a 5-mile area to hunt. Now, all that property didn't belong to my grandfather, but he had neighbors that were very close to him, and that we could hunt on their adjoining land. And my granddad, I told him that time, I said, I want a trophy deer this year. I don't want a regular deer. I'm not hunting for meat. I'm hunting for the big trophy. And on his back porch, he pointed over. He said, you see that third hollow? And I said, I see the hilltop. And he said, the crooked tree on it, go there. And I said, that's a long way. He said, probably 45 minutes to an hour walk. And I went there. I took off and got my climbing stand and headed that way, and went over a barbed wire fence back through my grandfather's field, and went up. These hills are like 45-degree angles. They're straight up almost. And the time I got to the third one, the very bottom of the third hill, he said, you'll see a huge creek, and there's an old grist mill there that was there when I was a boy. Now, my granddad was 92 years old at that time. and he grew up at that spot where that grist mill was. He had a cabin there that his mom and dad had had, and his grandfather had built. And you'll see the remnants of the old cabin. It'll be a clearing in the woods. You'll know you're there. You'll see the tin in the fireplace. And I got to that spot, and I could see exactly what he told me. And it was just a clearing in the middle of the woods with part of a tin roof and a chimney and huge stones where a mill used to be. And it was a flowing creek that was, I don't know, anywhere from waist high to deeper downward, and about 12 foot wide in length, width. And I put my tree around the stand and got it ready for the next morning. And there's a climbing stand. You had a wing nut, and you put a blade around each side, and you twist it down. And I climbed up in it and leaned back and cut a few limbs off, and came back down and went across the creek and hung a drag rag in a tree limb across the creek. And there was a game trail right on top of the bank of that creek on the opposite side, and you could see deer tracks in it and everything. And it's such a remote area, nothing was in there but just regular wild animals and game. And I had a drag rag I put on my shoe when I go in. It's like a little piece of cloth that's on a piece of elastic around your boot, and it covers up the human scent as you go in. So took that off and hung it on the limb. It's about 8 foot off the ground because I'm 6'5". I can reach up to about 8'2", and I grabbed the limb and tied it to it, and it kind of keeps that area a scent going down. It has what's called doe and estrus scent on it. And I went on back to my grandfather's house and told him the next morning, wake me up when you go to milk. And he milked cows at 5 o'clock in the morning or down toward the barn. And he woke me up. I headed that way, went down behind his house, through the back of his yard there, and went through a gate across probably about a 200-yard wide field where his cows were in, barbed wire fenced and wire fencing around it. And it's mainly a sage field that time of year, sage grass. Get to the other side, cross the barbed wire fence, climb over it, and I start walking up the hillside, and I hear something to the left of me moving. It sounded like somebody walking, like a person. It kind of startled me a little bit, and I shined my flashlight over and did not see anything. And kind of stayed on my mind, though, and I shined again, didn't see anything. I knew nobody'd be hunting in there, and I knew that it wasn't any animals in there, like a horse or a cow, so I went on up, and by the time I got to the top of the third hill, I'm going down, and it's dark, and I hadn't been in this area much. I was trying to find that creek, and then I would know where my stand was. As I'm coming down the hillside on the last hill, I hear something very heavy walking on top of the hill to the left of me. And I stopped again. I had a real small flashlight, but it was real bright, and I could see a long way with it. And I shined up there. I didn't see anything again, but I heard it walking, and I still didn't see anything. So I hurried on down the hillside, got in my tree stand, shimmying myself up all the way to the top of the tree, and I had a rope on my belt loop, and it's 28 foot long, and the very end of it is clipped to my gun where I can pull it up. And 28 foot was about the distance I like to be in the tree, because you keep the smells away and you're up high enough where you can see, and that's just what I went by. So I got up there and got set up and leaned back and pulled a little bar down in front of me. It has a little camo thing. It fell out right about below my neck, all the way down past my boots, and got ready to hunt. I pulled my gun up, put my safety strap around under my arms that was behind me, and hung my binoculars and my fanny pack to the left. My fanny pack had my extra Hornady bullets and my black powder horn in it, and kind of leaned back a little bit. I was ready to hunt, and waited the daylight come, and the daylight was coming, and I'd heard the regular animals moving around, squirrels, regular type thing. Did not hear any more noise in the woods, like somebody walking. But as soon as daylight come up, it wasn't long after that, I seen 3 deer. To the left of me was a large cane thicket, like bamboo looking stuff that grows on the rivers of Tennessee and the creeks, and I seen 3 deer came out. One large doe came out, walked through the creek, walked up on top bank and went down that game trail, and followed her. 2 younger deer, probably yearlings, were behind her, following that game trail. And they walked all the way down pretty close to the tree I'd hung the drag rag in. And they were just milling through the leaves eating acorns. It was a large acorn harvest that year, and deers love acorns. So I watched them for a good while. They were acting normal, and it was a great sign because where you got a doe, you're going to have a buck if they're in rut that time of year, which they were at that particular time. And I'm watching these deer, and all of a sudden, the big deer, the doe, the mother deer, I figured she was. The doe is the female. She looks over toward this cane thicket, and she's just frozen. They're not moving at all, just staring there. And I watched her ears flicker. All three of the deer were just like they were staring in that spot. They weren't moving one bit. And about that time, she took her right hoof, raised it up, and pawed toward the ground 3 times, and like she was trying to get something to move in there. Well, I'm excited. This is a big buck about to come out of this cane thicket over here. Now, this cane thicket went all the way down that creek bank, and I went around a bend. I couldn't see how far it went. And she just kept staring in the area, and all of a sudden, she raised her head up, and she blew real loud. Now, it sounded like somebody sneezing, except it's a lot louder. And when they do that, they're normally spooked or a little frightened of something, which got my attention. I'm thinking, well, the buck's about to come out. Well, about that time, she turns to the right and runs right by me. Now, I'm on a 45-degree angle, heels down. I'm almost overlooking the creek. And she runs right by me as fast as she can. The two younger deer are behind her. I watched them run off into the hardwoods. And thought, what was that? That's strange, because normally deer don't run like that unless somebody shot at them or spooked them. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just a huge buck deer. And so I'm looking in the cane thicket, and I start seeing the cane moving from the very back, like something's coming through it. And this stuff is thick and round. A person can't hardly walk through it, but this stuff's moving. I can see like 4 or 5 of them moving from the back to the front. And all of a sudden, it stops, and it's not moving. And I'm looking, because I'm thinking a buck's about to step out of this. Monster buck that can move this cane like this is going to step out of this cane thicket. And about that time, this thing steps out, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just standing there, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It took one step, leaped across the creek, which was probably 10 or 12 foot wide, landed on the other side on top of the game trail, walked straight down the game trail. I'm overlooking that spot, and it stops and looks right at me, and I'm looking at it thinking, what is this thing? I'd never heard of or seen anything quite like this. And it looks at me, it shows me its teeth. That's the first thing it did. And it was like gritting its teeth looking at me. And I was trying to breathe. I'm thinking, what kind of creature is this? I had no idea there was anything like that in the woods. I'd hunted there all my life. I'd never seen anything like that, but I wasn't that far in. And then it growls at me. And it's a growl like I've never heard before, not like a dog. It's more like a guttural type growl. It's long. And then it stops. It walks over to that drag rag hanging in the tree, pulls it down, smells of it, reaches the limb, grabs the whole limb, rips it out of the tree. Now, the tree limb wasn't massive. It was probably 2 to 3 inches at the diameter where it went into the tree, but it was still pretty powerful to me how it fell on the ground. It walks right back to the spot it was at, turns and looks at me again, and this thing is really mad. It's looking at me like it wants to kill me. It's so mad. I can see its face. One side of it, the right side of its mouth was either deformed or it had some kind of accident or something, because it was kind of out of contortion. It's hard to explain. It was kind of zigzagged up the side of its face. And it's looking at me with his eyes wide open, breathing hard, and just really mad. And it's growling. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Do I shoot this thing? I was just almost frozen to where I couldn't even move. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I thought, well, if I shoot this thing with 150 caliber shot, if I don't kill it, it's coming across the creek and it's going to make it mad and pull me out of this tree. So I pulled my gun up, I pulled my hammer back, and I laid it up on that bar, trying to make my mind up if I wanted to shoot it or not. And about that time, it lets out this scream. It was more of a scream like yell, like I've never heard before. And it was so loud it echoed down all down that hollow. By that time, I'm just like, this is it. This thing's coming across. It's going to kill me. And as soon as it does that, I'm ready. I pull the gun up, ready to fire. And it all of a sudden turns and just walks straight back away from me. It stopped one time and looked back at me, and then it just keeps walking. I'm not waiting to climb down 15, 20 minutes on this tree stand. I took the safety strap off of me. I lowered the bar in front of me that had the camo around me. I jumped 28 foot out of the top of the tree with my gun above my head. I landed in the leaves and slid all the way. It was on a real sharp angle. I slid all the way into the creek. The water was up above my waist, and I jumped up out of the creek, took off running up the hillside, looked back, did not see the creature. And it was so hard to run to the top of these hilltops because they're so straight up. And I got to the top of the first one. I had to stop. I had to get some breath. I couldn't go any further without breathing a little bit. And then crossed that hill, and I'm going about halfway down that hill, almost ready to start up the second hill. And I look back, and there the thing stands on top of the hill looking at me. And I'm like, I couldn't believe this thing had come back. And I know today now that it wasn't the same creature. It was a different one. But it gave me just enough adrenaline to take off even harder. And I looked back several times, and by the time I got to the bottom of the third hill, I had to stop and climb this 6-foot metal fence with barbed wire on top. I wasn't climbing, I was jumping it. So I run as fast as I can down this hill. I jumped this barbed wire fence, and the barbed wire catches the bottom of my pants and ripped them all the way up past my knee and tore a huge gash in the side of my leg. I kept running. I looked back. I did not see the creature. I ran across this field. It's about 200 yards wide. It's a sage field where my grandfather's cows are in. And got to the gate on the other side, opened the gate, looked through it, didn't see the creature, locked it, and ran into his backyard, under his porch, and opened through the door, through the kitchen door, and reached through and hooked the hook and locked the door back and looked out the window, did not see the creature, and ran into the right into my grandfather's living area. He was sitting to the left in his rocking chair. I ran into the corner of the living area between a potbelly stove and a wall and just about passed out right there in the corner. I was so out of wind I couldn't. He kept asking me, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" I just couldn't talk. I was out of breath, and I finally got myself together, and I got up and went into the kitchen and got a glass of water and came back out and sat down on the couch next to him, and he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost." And my granddad always called me boy. He never called me by my name. And I said, "Well, I seen a monster in the woods." And he said, "A monster?" I said, "Yes, sir, I seen a monster in the woods. I've never seen anything like this before." He said, "What did it look like?" And I told him, and my shock to me, me and my grandfather were super close, and he goes, "You seen a wood booger?" I said, "A wood booger? What is a wood booger? You never told me about a wood booger. I've been on this farm, practically grew up here with you, and was always here in the summer to help you with tobacco and crops and everything, and I've never heard of a wood booger." And he said, "I didn't want to tell you because if I did, you wouldn't hunt, you wouldn't spend the night in the barn, you wouldn't do the things that you've done and you're still doing." And he said, "They've been around here all my life," and he goes, "I've seen 4 in my lifetime, up close. I'll be out in the field working. I look up and want to be standing next to the fence just watching me work." And he said, "You know, all those noises you heard at night when we were sitting on the porch at night, you know, you would ask me what that crazy sound was, and I would tell you, oh, it's just an old catamite." And I said, "What is a catamite?" He goes, "Nothing you'd understand." And he said, "That catamite was the woodbugger screaming in the woods." And I said, "Okay, and I wish you'd have told me about these things." He goes, "Well, I should have thought that'd be a good place for one because nobody ever goes in there where you're at. But I didn't think, they don't hurt you, they're just real territorial." He said, "In the wintertime, they come to the hen house here, and they'll take 4 or 5 chickens at a time, not all of them." And my granddad had a huge hen house with a lot of chickens. He sold eggs and raised chickens, and I'll take 4 or 5 chickens, and they'll leave a little pile of rocks and sticks like they're paying for it. And he said, you know, every once in a while I'll be going down to the field with the cows, and they'll yell at me. And they know me, and they've seen me for years. And Nothing to worry about, boy. Just don't go down in that area. My granddad was such a honest, honorable person that he didn't want to do anything to fear me. Now, it took me a while to see it that way, but I kind of felt a little betrayal at first because me and my granddad were so close and we did so many things together. And, I had a large family with my brothers and my cousins, but I was the closest to my granddad of anybody. And I just spent a lot more time with him and my grandmother. I'd always help him in the fields and help him do crops and just stuff like that. And I felt a little betrayed a little bit. But then after I got to thinking about it and after he talked to me a couple times about it, I felt a little better about it, but it scared me so bad. I don't scare easy. I've been in the woods with bears running me up a tree, hogs that run you, lots of things that were dangerous. Even a cat one time, a big cat, and I was frightened, but I wasn't scared like I was with this thing. I've never been that scared in my life, and it was, I really thought that was my last day when this thing was screaming and showing me its teeth and growling. And, but I learned a lot from it at the same time. And, but I had nightmares for months. I didn't go hunting in the woods for 7 years. Now, my buddies still went up there every year, just like we did before. I let them hunt. I didn't hunt. I stayed with my granddad. And they'd say, "You don't want to hunt?" I said, "I just ain't in the mood to hunt." I mentioned what I'd seen to them, and they thought, "You sure you didn't have something to drink last night?" This was in 92. There weren't any Facebook groups. There weren't any podcasts. There weren't any radio shows. You pretty much were on your own when you brought up the fact that you'd seen some type of creature. I went to the library is what I did, trying to figure out what I'd seen. He called it a wood booger, and lo and behold, I went to 3 or 4 libraries. I found a book that said the top 10 Bigfoot. Number 2 was called the woodburger. And it was exactly like what I'd seen, except this one in the picture had red eyes. The one I seen had black eyes. But it took me a long time to get over that. It really did. And what hunting I'd do out of my truck in the field or something. I didn't go in the woods. And then I was fishing, years later when I had my next encounter. So if I hadn't had my second encounter, I would have never got over it. I truly believe that. I've never seen a wood booger since. I hope I never do. But my second encounter, these creatures looked nothing like that one. They were not aggressive. They were truly my friends. I spent a lot of time with these creatures. It all started with I was fishing. It was all I was doing in an area on the Cumberland River between Nashville and Cheatham County, Tennessee, which is super rural. I've never seen anybody in this area. There's an old water treatment plant or something you have to go through behind it. And a friend of mine's uncle worked there, and we'd park our car behind it inside this fence. And they would let us walk back through this game trail on the river and fish. And as far as I know, the only people ever been back there was me and those 2 guys that I played football with in high school. And I fished there for years afterwards. But it'd been a while since I'd been back there, probably 7 or 8 years. But I knew it was a good spot, and it was a time of year that we do crappie fishing in Tennessee in that area, or crappie, some people call them. But that's what I was back there for, and that was a real life changer when that happened. When I went in there, it was February of '99 or early March. It had been snowing outside, so it was cold. It was in the 30s. Like it is in Tennessee, and I was crappie fishing. I had a styrofoam bucket with 4 or 5 dozen minnows and a couple of rods, and I carried a 5-gallon bucket, and I put all my stuff in it, including my tackle box. And I used that bucket, and I'd turn it upside down, and I'd put it up against the tree, and I'd sit on it against the tree, kind of lean back on it. It was kind of like what we'd always used to sit on and carry our equipment out with, too. And then when you caught fish, you could put them in there and carry them out. So it had a pretty handy use. So, I had those minnows that particular day, and I went and I set my poles out. I had 3, and there's a sandbar that runs out the river there next to a creek. There's a creek that runs into the river, and this is the Cumberland River of Tennessee. It's a big river, and the sandbar's next to it. And when the water's at regular height, you can walk out on that sandbar and reel your fish in, because if you reel them straight off the bank where you are, their tree roots are sticking out and you get all tangled. So you're better off to walk out onto the sandbar and reel them in and then go up and put them on the stringer, which that's what I did. I had a fish stringer tied to one of those roots, and I'd caught a fish that particular day and went down and come back up, and I put my fish on the stringer and went back to my place to set. My minnow bucket's gone. Where's my minnow bucket? How you lose a styrofoam minnow bucket out in the middle of nowhere? And looking around, and I don't see anything, and I looked around the banks, and I had no minnows and no bucket. It was really puzzling, so I had to leave. I had nothing to fish with, so I gathered all my stuff up and went on. And the next week I came back, and it had been raining and snowing, and the water was up. I couldn't see the sandbar. The water was above it, and this day I had to just fish over the root of the bank and put my poles out, and I'm fishing again. I walked down to the bank, and I got a little tangled up, and I'm reeling the fish in and caught it, put it on. I think it was the second fish I caught that day, and I went back to my bucket. Minnow bucket's gone again. And I'm like, how does 2 minnow buckets disappear? Especially a styrofoam minnow bucket. It floats in the river, it doesn't sink. And I'm looking around the bank, and it was a little windy that day, and weather had been a little rough before then anyway. And never seen it, don't know what happened to it. So kind of bugged me a little bit, like what could happen to 2 minnow buckets? It's very strange. So it wasn't the next week that I went back. It was like 2 weeks later I went back, because I think I was working on that particular weekend. And I went back, and it was normal. Sandbar was up. It was a nice sunny day, but it's still cool, in the 30s, low 30s. And I had another bucket of minnows, and this time, though, I'd tied a rope, or a small rope, around the handle, and I was going to tie that rope around the tree that I leaned against. That way, if something did try to get it, I would catch them before it got it, because it would have the rope on it. So I set my poles up and put them out, and I'm fishing. I've caught 2 or 3 fish. I'm having a real good morning, and I went down the sandbar and came back to get my minnow. My minnow bucket's gone. But this time the rope is stretched tight, and it's all the way up into what we call kudzu. It's a real thick vine-like stuff that grows on the river and around interstates. You'll see it's real thick. And I'm looking over, and I can see the bucket. It's real thick. You have to get on your knees to get. The game trail went right through the middle of that, but it was so thick you would have to get down on your knees just about to get in there. And I could see the rope stretched tight, and I looked down and seen the bucket. I got up there on my knees and started to get my minnow bucket. I raised up when I got in there, and this stuff has kind of owned me a little bit on my head. And I looked to the left, and there's a minnow bucket laying in the kudzu. And I thought, that's strange. And I looked over to the right, down the bank a little bit, and there's another minnow bucket. I'm thinking, well, there's my 2 buckets that I lost a couple of weeks ago. So I went and retrieved them, came back to this minnow bucket that my minnows were in. The top was off. The top was off. It was, water had sloshed out of it, and it's real muddy right there on that game trail anyway. And there was only 1 minnow in the bucket. And I had 4 or 5 dozen in it. I'd only used probably 3 or 4 minnows. And right next to I reached down to get it, and I looked right next to it, and there was a footprint in the mud where the water had splashed out. And it didn't look like it wasn't a huge footprint. I wear a 14. It was more like maybe an 8 or 9 inch track. I thought, well, this is very strange. Here it is 30 degrees out here, and there's some kids running up down the riverbank barefooted. That's the first thing that I thought. So, now, I'd never seen any people in this spot in my life except me and my 2 friends. I think my dad had been there one time with me, but nobody knew where the spot was. Nobody ever fished there. Well, I'm thinking, I pick up my bucket, I bring it back, and set it next to the tree, and my poles are still out except the one that I caught the fish on. And I'm thinking, this is really strange. So I walked over to the edge, and I had brought my 410 shotgun, which is just a little shotgun, a little squirrel gun, we call them. And it was against the tree on the other side because I thought somebody was stealing my bucket. I didn't know if they were going to try to rob me or what. I didn't have any idea, but it wasn't a real powerful gun, but it was enough to get somebody's attention. So I'm looking down through there, and I don't see anything, and I start yelling, hey, whoever's in here better come out, because I got a gun, and I'm not going to let you steal my buckets anymore. You better come out. Got nothing. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. It's pretty much like that. So I go back, I sit on my bucket, I'm acting like I'm fishing. I only got one minnow. I'm not even worried about fishing at this time. I want to catch whoever this is. And I'm looking at my poles like I'm fishing, but out of my peripheral vision of my left eye, after about an hour and a half, maybe a little longer, I catch movement. And I look over real quick, and it's this little creature hanging out. It's holding onto a tree that's looking at me like this. Well, I seen that thing, and the first thing in my mind was, oh no, I don't want to fool with these things anymore. I don't want anything to do with any of these creatures. I've already had enough was my first experience. And this thing would look at me and go back in. So I sat there for a minute trying to figure what to do. I reached around the side of the tree, I get my gun, and I laid it in my lap, because I'm thinking if there's a little one, there's a big one, and which there always are. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what should I do? Should I go home? Should I leave? What should I do? So I sat there a little longer, and it leans out again. It's looking right at me. This creature is, I was guessing at that time, probably about 5 foot tall, 4.5 to 5 foot tall. It's a little one. It's a juvenile. It's not a big one. And I'm thinking, what should I do? Should I leave? And I got a little nervous, started thinking about it. Man, these things, there may be a whole bunch of them. They're going to attack me. So I become a coward and got my gear together and my gun, and I headed out of there and went back to my truck. And I left. And the whole entire week that week at EDAC, I could not stand the fact that I was running from this thing, and I was not going to let this creature do me like this other one had for 7 years. So I made my mind up. I was going back, and I was going to sit there till I figured out what to do. And I had my mind, if they tried to come out, this time I carried a bigger gun, and I was going to fire away if they had tried to attack me. And I never tried to fish. I didn't have any minnows. I just brought my bucket. I set the poles up like I was fishing, and had my 30-30 on this side of the tree, and lever action Marlin 30-30, and just sat there and waited. And it wasn't long, less than probably an hour. I see that little creature looking at me again. So I turned completely around with my bucket, staring at it. So when it looked back at me, and see me looking at it. And then it started looking at me. Before I knew it, it was staring at me, and I was staring at it. And I said, if you've got any big friends that are going to hurt me, you better tell them to come out now, because I've got a gun and I'm going to start firing. I was just talking to them like I would a normal person, even though I didn't know they would communicate or understand me that way. I was going to do it that way. And I sat there probably for 2 or 3 hours, and only seen the one, and right before I left, another one came out. There was one about the same size as that one. It was right behind this one. They would both lean out and look at me. And I would say something. They would just look at me. I didn't feel threatened, and I started feeling comfortable, because I thought, well, if they were going to attack me, they would have already done it by now. And I kind of sat there, and I watched these two for a while until it got almost dark, and I headed out. And I started going there every day. It was only about 30 minutes from my work, and I'd work my own schedule when I wanted to work, when I didn't want to work, the type of position I had. And I started visiting these creatures every day. Or every other day. Sometimes I would always tell them, I'll be here tomorrow or the next day. And I started off with bringing them. I never heard of gifting at that time. I started off by bringing them things. I brought them some rocks. I brought them some marbles. I brought them a ball, different things. I made a little wooden Coke crate box. I put it together. It was coming apart. I laid it in the forks above the tree I sat against, and laid all their stuff in there. And I would tell them, hey, I brought you a gift up here. If you want it, you can have it. And I would spend a little time trying to talk to them. Sometimes I would see them, sometimes I wouldn't. I could hear them, though, in there. They knew I was there if I didn't see them. And then I would hear one that sounded a lot bigger, but he didn't show himself, or she didn't show herself. And they would get the gifts, and I would leave. And this went on for quite a while, and then I started seeing them more, and then they started being more friendly with me. And finally, the little one would come out all the time, and I could see her maybe 35, 40 feet from me, sitting in between the little game trail there, and I could see her whole body. She was a female, and she was probably about 5 foot tall. And her other friend that come in and sat behind her, he was about the same height. He was a male, she was a female. And I would talk to them. I'd try to communicate with them and tell them things, and try to get some kind of something out of them. And I got a few grunts and moans and signs and hands and that type of stuff, occasionally a stick or something. And as time went on, I built trust with them, and they built trust with me. I started bringing them food. I found out I brought them every kind of food you could think of. Bring them one each time. Their favorite food was cantaloupe. They loved cantaloupe. They didn't want it cut up. They wanted the whole melon in their box. Their second favorite food was cooked bacon. Who doesn't like cooked bacon? But they would eat 2 or 3 pounds of it. I'd put it on a little platter and slide it over toward the brush. They'd come out their little hand, grab the tray, and pull it in. I could see them all over there eating it. And they give some to the other ones in the back that I couldn't see, but I could hear them moving around back there. So, but it was an amazing adventure, and I became really close friends to them. And when I would leave every day, I'd say, bye, I'll see y'all later. And I'd start walking out, and they'd go, bye, bye, bye. I could hear different byes in different areas, and they were mocking my bye, and, it was cool. And I'd walk on out, and I'd go to my vehicle, and every time I'd come in, I would say, hey, I'm here today. Hope y'all are doing good. And I would start talking to them all the way in. There's about 200-yard walk back there on this game trail in the woods. And when they heard me, they'd get excited. I could hear them running and whooping and making all kinds of noises. And it was a really good relationship. I think the most amazing thing, well, one of the most amazing, there was several amazing things that I learned from them, but the most amazing thing is they would bring me gifts. They brought me a cardboard half-gallon milk carton that they had found in the river, apparently. At one time it was red and white, but it had faded out to pink and white. It had sticks sticking all through 4 sides that formed an X when they come out. Their family marker was an X. That was their family's marker, where they were called the X. That was what they called themselves. They would leave X's on the trail next to my tree I sat at. They brought me 3 catfish. They were all jumping when I got there one time. So they were really, they were awesome. They were really good. They became really close to me. And I brought them, I went to the dime store and brought them a bag of plastic whistles one time. Little plastic whistles had black string, like a birthday party thing. And I hung them on all the little sticks around their kazoo. I said, I'm leaving you these gifts. Y'all check them out, and I'll see you tomorrow. I come back in the next day, and I come through, and I said, hey, I'm here, and I hear whistles blowing everywhere. I hear one across the river, 2 or 3 straight ahead, and one up on there's a railroad track up onto the far left. I hear one up there blowing. So these things were so intelligent that they knew how to blow the whistle. So I started realizing this is not an ape. These creatures are very, I learned that they understand Native American language, because I knew some words from my Lakota Sioux. My grandmother taught me that and some of that. And then they knew English well. They have their own language, and they knew words. And I asked them many, many, many times. I would ask them, my name is Darrell. Please tell me your name. My name is Darrell. Please tell me your name. I would draw in the dirt right there in front of them in the summer when it was dirt. And I would get words and things from them occasionally, and they really trusted me. And then that's when Tobias came in. He was the one that I really became close to. All of a sudden, instead of 2 little ones, there was a big one that came in behind them, and he sat there. Every time I came, he sat there with them and watched me. He was about 7.5 foot tall. And he became my really, really close friend. Him and the young female. She was about 5.5 foot tall last time I seen her. But they understood. They understood the person I was. They could read what I was going to say before I even finished my sentence. They already knew what I was about to do. It was amazing, the fantastic ability that they had. Almost like they could read what you were thinking at times. And the closer I got to them, the more of this type of thing I seen, and it was a really strange but crazy friendship that I made with these creatures. And Tobias would wait for me till I brought him a cantaloupe. He'd be waiting at the very end when I came in. He'd be waiting there for his cantaloupe. So um, this lasted almost 5 years, and they were really special to me, and I felt like I was special to them. So I trusted them. They trusted me. I brought a friend in there one time with me, one of my best friends, Gary, and he'd heard me talk about these things. I didn't tell everybody. I told very few people, but I told him about them, and he said, "You really got these things on the river?" And I said, "Man, I've been going over there for nearly 5 years now. What are you talking about? You think I just make it up?" He goes, "No, I believe you, D. I believe you, but I'll go with you." Okay, so I brought him. I was a little skeptical because I didn't want to upset them, me bringing somebody else. And I did, and went back and sat on the bucket, and I'm sitting on the bucket like this, looking this way. He's on this side of me with his head up next to my shoulder. The little one came out, the female. And when he seen that creature, now this is a guy I'd known all my life that would, he was about as tough as they come. When he seen that creature, he went in a complete panic. He tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, "Man, what are these things? I don't want to be around these things." He took off running so fast behind me out of the trail, all the way back, went in, jumped in my truck, locked the door, and was blowing the horn. And I'm trying to figure out how to tell these creatures, don't pay no attention to him. He didn't mean anything by it. Well, I won't do that again. And I did do it again, but it scared him to death. He didn't ever want to see him again. But anyway, I was friends with them for a long time, and they meant a lot to me, and I learned so many things from them. And I asked them many a time, "Where did you come from? Where did you come from?" And they and the female went, I said, "You mean you come from outer space?" She didn't say anything. "I mean, you come from another galaxy." I said, you came from another galaxy. Do you know who Jesus Christ is? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? You came from another galaxy and you believe in Jesus Christ. And all two of them, Tobias and her, the middle one, didn't do anything. So that was the only thing I can tell you, that apparently they came from another galaxy. They're not them, but their family originally. So I wish I could have got more, but that's what I got. I would tell anybody that's had a sighting, and I guess there's a little difference between a sighting and an encounter, because a sighting would be maybe one walking across the road, and an encounter would be in the woods and you see one 2 or 3 times, or it's maybe stalking you or something else. But I would tell them to be patient with them. Don't panic. They do feed on your fear. If they know you're scared, they're gonna feed on that. And unfortunately, I don't think they are mean by doing that. I think they learn from, they want you to know that they are the alpha, and they are. They're way above us as far as intelligence goes. It's amazing with the intelligence they have. But or any creature that has the abilities and the strength and to do what these creatures are able to do, if they don't like you, they're not going to let you see them. You're not going to see them. If you have a bad intentions, you're not going to see them. If you just happen to run across one, you're not going to see it again. If you're one of those people going in the woods just to harm them, or they don't like you to destroy their land. They're very sacred about the forests and the woods. They don't like you to leave trash. They want you to go in. I would suggest somebody, like I did for a long time, go in, take your shoes and socks off, ground yourself, and talk to them. Hey, I'm here just to be your friend. I'm visiting your home. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to stay. I'm just visiting your home. Because when you go into the forest, you are visiting their home. That's just like them walking into your living room and sitting down and throwing trash on the floor. You respect their area, and they will respect you. So be patient and don't show fright. I had 2 24 disposable cameras And I don't remember if they were Kodak or some other brand, but they were the ones you took pictures of. They were disposable, little cardboard like thing. You took pictures, and I would take them to Walgreens or somewhere and have them developed. And every one of those pictures that I took turned out black, nothing on them. Then I got another camera that was green and white cardboard. I thought, well, maybe it's just the cameras. The guy at the Walgreens told me there's nothing on here. I said, well, that can't be possible. I took them right in front of them. And I got several pictures off the next one, and I still do own some of those pictures. I did post some of those pictures years and years ago, and people stole them and claimed they were theirs, so I don't share those anymore, but I still do own 3 or 4 of those pictures that are very, very, very personal to me, and I share them with people I know, but I won't let them make a copy of them. But and also, I had 2 of those pictures stolen. One was on a TV show about 3 years ago. They claimed it to be the creature they were looking for in the woods, but it was my picture. So that's the reason I don't share what pictures I do have. And I do have a picture of the one I call Tobias, and I do have a picture of the large female that he was very close to that may have been his wife, I'm not sure. We have the largest private Bigfoot group. It's called Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. We have 70,000 members. We've ousted 39,000 people because we are a group that doesn't allow any criticism. If you criticize somebody, if you ridicule somebody, if you call somebody a name, or you say they're lying or they're not truthful, unfortunately, you won't be in the group another minute. You're out. So our group is the number one group, I'm told. I don't know. We feel like we do a great job because everybody that's in my group loves my group. I've got a large number of my group members here today. Dawn McNally's up there, and she just talked to y'all a minute ago. She's one of my admins. She's one of the best researchers I know. Very good with her family of Bigfoot. And C.R. Gay and Roger Gay are also here. They're big members in my group. Ron Moorhead, my best friend, is an admin in my group. Martin Groves is an admin in my group. We have a lot of good people, and we're not looking to harm anybody or hurt anybody. We want you to join that group and feel free to tell your encounter without being ridiculed, because you won't be ridiculed in our group. They'll be out the door, and you'll be the member in there. So that's very important to me, because I went through probably 20 years of not being able to tell anybody what I'd seen because everybody thought I was crazy, and I was even an elected official at that time. And my best friend Martin Groves was the same way. He had PTSD until 2022 when he told his first encounter. So Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures is the name of my group. We'd love to have you join. Don't, like I said, you don't have to worry about anybody harassing you or making you feel uncomfortable about telling your encounter or what's happened to you. Ron Moorhead and I have our podcast radio show every Monday night. It's every other Monday night, I'm sorry. And it comes on at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. And we have a huge, huge following of people that know me and know Ron. And we're the same way on our radio show. We're on the United Public Radio Network, and we broadcast through 47 countries, and we average about 2 million people a week listening to us, and we sure like to have you listen in on us on that. And I want to thank you for having me on your interview.